The city was alive just hours ago, its streets packed with honking cars, crowds moving like waves, and the distant wail of sirens. Now, that life was gone. In its place, a nightmare had begun. Daniel Carter had always hated waking up early, but today was different. The moment he opened his eyes in his tiny apartment, an unsettling silence filled the air. No distant traffic, no morning chatter from the street vendors below, just an eerie, unnatural stillness. Then came the screams. They started faint, almost like distant echoes, but within minutes, they grew into something monstrous. The panicked cries of people running for their lives, the horrific screeches of something inhuman. Daniel rushed to his window, yanking the blinds open. His heart nearly stopped. The streets below were pure chaos. People sprinted in every direction, pursued by staggering, bloodied figures. One man, his suit ripped to shreds, tripped and fell. The creatures were on him instantly, tearing into his flesh as he shrieked in agony. Daniel stumbled back, his breathing ragged. What the hell? A sudden, violent pounding at his apartment door made him jump. Dan! Open the door! It was his neighbor, Kevin. Daniel hesitated for just a second before rushing to unlock the door. The moment he did, Kevin stumbled inside, gasping for breath. His shirt was smeared with blood, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "They're everywhere," Kevin panted. "It's like the whole city just turned into a slaughterhouse." Daniel slammed the door shut, locking it again. "What's happening? Who are they?" Kevin wiped sweat from his forehead. I don't know. People are turning into these things. They don't stop. They don't feel pain. They just..." A loud crash from the hallway made them both freeze. Slow, shuffling footsteps followed. Then came the guttural growls. "Shit," Kevin whispered. Daniel grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, his hands trembling. He had never been in a fight before, let alone against something like this. The doorknob rattled. Then, a violent bang. Daniel and Kevin backed away, pressing themselves against the wall as the door shook with each impact. Bang! Bang! A horrific moan seeped through the cracks. Then, silence. Daniel could barely breathe. His grip on the knife tightened. Kevin clutched a broken chair leg like a bat, sweat dripping from his brow. Minutes passed. "Maybe it left," Kevin whispered. Daniel wasn't so sure. His instincts screamed at him to stay quiet, to stay still. And then, the door frame splintered. The wood cracked open as something shoved its way inside. The creature that stumbled and was barely recognizable as human. Its face was torn open, one eye missing, its mouth stretched into an unnatural grin dripping with dark, congealed blood. It let out a guttural snarl, lunging toward them. Kevin swung first. The chair leg cracked against the creature's skull, but it barely reacted. Daniel, frozen in terror, could only watch as Kevin swung again, this time knocking the thing to the ground. "Go!" Kevin shouted. Daniel snapped out of his trance and sprinted for the fire escape, yanking the window open. Kevin shoved the struggling creature aside and followed. As soon as they were on the metal platform, Daniel looked down, and regret filled him instantly. The street was crawling with them. Dozens, no, hundreds, of the undead roamed below, snarling, biting, feasting. "We can't go down," Kevin panted. Daniel's mind raced. "Then we go up." They climbed. The fire escape creaked under their weight as they scaled the apartment building. The city stretched around them, once a thriving metropolis, now a graveyard of burning cars, shattered windows, and blood-streaked streets. Kevin reached the rooftop first, hauling himself over the ledge. Daniel followed, collapsing onto the rough gravel surface. They were safe, for now. Kevin turned to him, his face grim. "What do we do now?" Daniel wiped the sweat from his face, his heart still hammering. The truth was, he had no idea. But one thing was certain, he wasn't dying today. Not in this city. Not like this. Daniel and Kevin crouched behind a rusted air vent, their breathing shallow. The rooftop gave them a bird's-eye view of the nightmare unfolding below, cars burning, people running, and those things hunting them down one by one. The city they had known was gone, replaced by something out of a horror film. "We can't stay here," Kevin muttered. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. He knew Kevin was right. Sooner or later, the dead would find their way up. The smell of blood, the noise, they were drawn to it like moths to a flame. "What about your phone?" Daniel asked, reaching for his own, only to see the dreaded no-signal warning flashing on the screen. Kevin shook his head. "Nothing. No calls, no internet. It's like the whole city just shut down." A loud explosion rocked the streets below, sending a plume of fire into the sky. Daniel and Kevin ducked as glass shards rained from a nearby building. A fuel truck had gone up in flames, and now dozens of those creatures were staggering toward it, drawn by the noise. Kevin's face hardened. "We move now. While they're distracted." Daniel hesitated. He wasn't used to making life-or-death decisions. Just this morning, he was worrying about meeting deadlines at work. Now, survival was all that mattered. Kevin pointed toward a construction site 2 buildings over. "We jump rooftops, get to that site, and find supplies. Maybe weapons. Then we figure out our next move." Daniel gulped. Jumping between rooftops? He wasn't exactly an athlete. But before he could protest, Kevin was already moving. The first leap. Kevin ran and leaped across the gap between the buildings, landing with a roll. He turned back, motioning for Daniel to follow. Daniel took a deep breath. He stepped back, sprinted forward, and jumped. For a terrifying moment, he was weightless. Then his hands slammed onto the ledge, his body dangling over the alleyway below. "Shit, Kevin!" Daniel gasped, his arms burning. Kevin grabbed his wrist, pulling him up with a grunt. "Got you. Pull yourself up." With every ounce of strength, Daniel scrambled onto the rooftop, rolling onto his back, chest heaving. "That was too close," he panted. "No time to rest," Kevin said, helping him up. "Let's move." They hurried across the rooftop and down a metal ladder leading into the construction site. The skeletal structure of an unfinished skyscraper loomed over them, steel beams, stacks of bricks, and abandoned tools littered the area. It was eerily quiet. "Stay alert," Kevin whispered, grabbing a crowbar from a workbench. Daniel picked up a rusted pipe, gripping it tightly. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Then, they heard it. A wet, gurgling growl. Daniel's stomach turned as a blood-soaked worker staggered from the shadows, his face half-eaten, his construction helmet dangling uselessly from his head. Then another figure emerged. And another. Within seconds, half a dozen undead construction workers surrounded them. Daniel's grip tightened on the pipe. "We fight?" Kevin nodded. "We fight." The first kill. The first zombie lunged. Kevin swung the crowbar, shattering its skull in one brutal strike. It collapsed, twitching violently before going still. Daniel barely had time to react as another one reached for him. His instincts kicked in, and he swung the pipe with all his strength. It smashed into the creature's jaw, sending it reeling backward. But it didn't go down. It lunged again. Kevin tackled it from the side, pinning it down before driving the crowbar into its head. Blood splattered across his shirt, but he didn't even flinch. More were coming. "We can't fight them all," Daniel yelled. Kevin's eyes darted around until he spotted a half-finished scaffolding. "There! We climb." They sprinted toward it, shoving past the approaching undead. Kevin went first, scaling the metal bars like a professional. Daniel followed, his hands slipping on the cold steel, but the adrenaline kept him moving. Below them, the creatures snarled, reaching out but unable to climb. They reached the top of the scaffolding, now standing on the unfinished upper floor of the building. The city stretched before them, dark, broken, and filled with horrors beyond imagination. Kevin exhaled. "We need a plan. A real one." Daniel nodded, his mind racing. Supplies, shelter, food. They needed everything. But one question loomed over them like a dark cloud. Was there anyone left alive in the city? The wind howled through the steel framework of the unfinished skyscraper as Daniel and Kevin sat on the cold metal beams, catching their breath. Below them, the streets were filled with the dead, their hungry moans echoing in the night. Fires still raged in the distance, casting eerie shadows over the ruined city. Daniel's hands were still trembling. Just hours ago, he had never even been in a fight, and now he had bashed in a man's skull, if that thing could even be called a man anymore. Kevin wiped blood off his face, his expression grim. We need to find food, weapons, and a real shelter. We can't stay exposed like this. Daniel nodded, trying to steady his nerves. Where do we go? Every street is crawling with those things. Kevin pointed toward a darkened building across the street. That's a department store. If it hasn't been ransacked, we might find supplies. Daniel hesitated. It was one thing to stay up here, away from danger, but moving through the city streets? That was suicide. Kevin seemed to read his mind. It's either that, or we starve up here. You decide. Daniel clenched his jaw. He hated that Kevin was right. The descent into danger. Climbing down the construction site was riskier than they expected. The lower levels had more of those creatures, workers who had been infected during the outbreak. One of them, a burly man in a torn safety vest, lurched toward them near the second floor. His mouth hung open unnaturally, his teeth broken from chewing on something, or someone. Kevin didn't hesitate, he swung the crowbar, cracking the thing's skull. It crumpled instantly. Keep moving, he muttered, already leading the way. Daniel followed, his heart pounding. The only way out was through the emergency scaffolding at the back of the site. But then, a scream. A real, human scream. Daniel and Kevin froze. It came from the street below. They peeked over the edge and saw her, a young woman sprinting down the road, her long brown hair flying behind her. A pack of zombies was chasing her, their moans growing louder as they closed in. Shit, Daniel breathed. She wasn't going to make it. Kevin's grip tightened on his crowbar. We have to help her. Daniel's instincts screamed no. Helping others was dangerous. They barely had a plan for themselves. But watching her die wasn't an option either. All right, he said. Let's go. The rescue. Kevin jumped down first, landing on a dumpster below. Daniel followed, wincing at the impact. The girl saw them and shouted, "Help!" Kevin didn't hesitate. He ran straight for the closest zombie, swinging his crowbar into its temple. It collapsed, but the others were still coming. Daniel gripped his pipe, fear threatening to paralyze him. But then one of the creatures locked eyes with him, what used to be a man in a tattered business suit. Its bloodshot eyes gleamed hungrily as it lunged. Daniel barely had time to react. He ducked, swinging the pipe upwards into its chin. Teeth shattered, blood sprayed, but it kept coming. Kevin tackled it from the side, pinning it to the ground. Kill it, he shouted. Daniel hesitated for only a second, then brought the pipe crashing down on its skull. The sickening crunch sent a shiver through his spine. The girl had fallen, but she was still fighting, kicking at a zombie trying to grab her leg. Kevin grabbed her hand and yanked her to her feet. Run! They sprinted toward the department store's entrance. Daniel shoved through the glass doors, slamming them shut behind them. For a moment, they were safe. Then they heard banging. The zombies outside were already smashing against the glass. Kevin cursed. We need to block this off, now. Trapped inside. Daniel and the girl pushed over metal shelves, barricading the entrance as best they could. The undead slammed against the glass, but for now, it held. The girl collapsed onto the floor, panting. Thank you, she said between breaths. Kevin looked at her. What's your name? Sarah, she said, brushing hair out of her face. She looked shaken but determined. I was trying to find my brother. We got separated when everything went to hell. Daniel's stomach twisted. Family. He hadn't even thought about checking on his own. His parents lived in another city, but his sister, she was here. Where was he last? Kevin asked. Sarah hesitated. Near the hospital. Kevin and Daniel exchanged a look. The hospital. If there was one place worse than the streets, it was there. Kevin sighed. For now, we need to focus on supplies. We can't go anywhere hungry. Sarah nodded. Agreed. Daniel exhaled. All right. Let's get what we can and figure out a way out of here. But as they moved deeper into the dark, silent aisles of the store, none of them noticed the shadow lurking in the back. They weren't alone. The department store was eerily silent, save for the faint growls of the undead pounding against the barricaded entrance. Shelves stood in disarray, some toppled over, others ransacked by looters. Dust swirled in the dim emergency lighting. Daniel gripped his pipe tightly, eyes scanning every dark aisle. Something felt off. Kevin took the lead, holding his crowbar at the ready. Sarah followed closely, her breath still uneven from the chase. We need food first, Kevin whispered. Then weapons. Then we figure out where to go next. Daniel nodded, but his gut told him they weren't alone. And he was right. The hidden threat. As they moved past the pharmacy section, a rustling noise made Daniel freeze. He turned his head slowly, his heart pounding, toward the sporting goods section. Kevin heard it too. He raised a hand, signaling for silence. Then, a shadow darted between the aisles. Daniel barely had time to react before a figure lunged out of the darkness, tackling him to the ground. Drop your weapons, a voice snarled. Daniel gasped as a knife pressed against his throat. His attacker was a man, not a zombie, his face covered in dirt, his eyes wild with paranoia. Sarah let out a yelp, stumbling back, while Kevin raised his crowbar but hesitated. Easy, man, Kevin said, his voice calm. We're not here to hurt you. The man's grip on the knife trembled. His eyes darted between them, desperate, untrusting. Who else is with you? The man hissed. Nobody, Daniel croaked, his pulse hammering. Just us. The man looked at them for a long moment, his breathing ragged. Then, just as suddenly as he attacked, he let go, stepping back. Daniel scrambled to his feet, rubbing his throat. Kevin tightened his grip on the crowbar. Who the hell are you? The man exhaled, his shoulders sagging. Name's Travis. He looked exhausted, his clothes torn and blood-stained. But his hands weren't shaking like someone weak. This was a man who had been surviving alone for a long time. Sarah was the first to speak. Are you alone? Travis nodded. For now. Kevin frowned. You've been living here? Travis gestured toward the stockroom door at the back of the store. Follow me. The refuge. Against their better judgment, they followed him inside. The backroom was a survivor's hideout. Shelves were stocked with bottled water, canned food, even a few medical supplies. A sleeping bag was rolled out in one corner, next to a lantern. Sarah's eyes widened. You have all this? Travis shrugged. I was here when everything fell apart. Blocked the doors, avoided attention. I only go out when I need to. Daniel exhaled. Smart. Kevin crossed his arms. If you've got it all figured out, why attack us? Travis's eyes darkened. Because people aren't much better than those things out there. He sat down, running a hand through his messy hair. I've seen what happens when you trust the wrong people. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. Daniel didn't ask for details. Sarah, however, did. What happened? Travis sighed. I was part of a group. 8 of us. We found a safe place, a gun shop. We had supplies, weapons, everything. His jaw tightened. Then they turned on me. Daniel frowned. Why? Travis laughed bitterly. Because in the apocalypse, there's no such thing as trust. They wanted to thin the numbers to make supplies last longer. Kevin clenched his fists. So you ran? I barely made it out. Travis glanced at them. That's why I stay alone. No risks. A heavy silence filled the room. Sarah finally spoke. Not all people are bad. Travis let out a dry chuckle. I used to think that too. The warning. Kevin changed the subject. Look, we just need supplies. We won't take much. Travis nodded. Take what you need. But if you're smart, you won't stay in the city much longer. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Why? Travis hesitated. Then he looked them dead in the eye. Because something worse is coming. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. What do you mean? Travis leaned forward. The undead aren't the biggest problem anymore. The real danger is what's left of the living. He pointed toward the boarded-up window. A group, real nasty guys, has been moving through the city. They take whatever they want. Whoever they want. Kevin's expression darkened. Raiders? Travis nodded. If they find this store, they won't just take supplies. They'll kill anyone in their way. Sarah swallowed hard. Daniel exhaled. So, we need to leave. Travis nodded. Before it's too late. Kevin looked at Daniel. Then we better make a plan. Fast. They all knew the truth, they weren't safe here. Not from the dead. And definitely not from the living. The dim lantern flickered in the department store's stockroom, casting long shadows against the walls. Daniel, Kevin, Sarah, and Travis sat in a tense circle, their minds racing with Travis's warning. Raiders were in the city. And if they found this place, they wouldn't just take supplies, they'd take lives. Kevin was the first to speak. We need to get out of here before they show up. Travis leaned against the shelf, arms crossed. Easier said than done. The streets are crawling with the dead, and those raiders, they hunt in packs. Sarah swallowed hard. So what do we do? Stay here and hope they don't find us? Travis shook his head. No. We need to move before they do. But that means traveling at night. Daniel tensed. The idea of wandering through the dark city, with zombies lurking in every alley, sent a chill through him. But staying put was even riskier. Kevin clenched his jaw. All right. We gather supplies and move out before dawn. They all nodded in agreement. But none of them realized, one of them had already made a different choice. A midnight escape. Hours passed. The department store remained silent, the only sound the occasional moan of the undead outside. Daniel sat on the cold floor, his back against the wall. His body was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't let him sleep. He replayed the past 24 hours in his head, how his life had changed, how everything had fallen apart so fast. He sighed and stood up, deciding to check on the others. Kevin and Sarah were asleep near the shelves, curled up in their jackets for warmth. Travis sat by the entrance, gripping his knife, keeping watch. Or at least, that's what Daniel thought. Then he noticed something. Travis's backpack was gone. Panic surged through Daniel's chest. His eyes darted to the side, the supply shelf was half empty. His stomach twisted. Travis was stealing supplies. And worse, he was leaving them behind. The confrontation. Daniel didn't think, he just acted. He rushed toward the front of the store just in time to see Travis unbarricading a side door, slipping into the darkness with a backpack full of food and water. Travis! Daniel hissed. Travis froze. Slowly, he turned, his face unreadable. Daniel stepped closer, keeping his voice low so the others wouldn't wake. You were going to leave us? Travis exhaled, his grip tightening on his knife. You don't get it, Daniel. I told you, I don't trust people. Daniel's fists clenched. We trusted you. Travis's expression darkened. And that was your mistake. For a moment, Neither of them moved. The tension was suffocating. Then, a sound outside. Low voices. Boots crunching against shattered glass. Raiders. Travis's eyes widened. Shit. Daniel's blood turned ice cold. The decision was made for them, there was no more time to argue. The attack. Daniel sprinted back inside, shaking Kevin and Sarah awake. Get up. They're here. Kevin snapped awake instantly, grabbing his crowbar. Sarah's eyes widened in fear. Who? The Raiders. We have to go, now. A loud bang echoed through the store as the front barricade rattled. Shadows moved behind the broken glass, flashlights flickering through the cracks. A gruff voice called out. We know you're in there. Come out, and maybe we won't kill you. Sarah sucked in a breath. Kevin clenched his jaw. Travis cursed under his breath. Damn it. They must have followed me. Daniel's stomach twisted. This was his fault. If he hadn't caught Travis sneaking out, maybe they would have had more time to escape. Back door, Kevin whispered. It's our only way out. They turned, but it was too late. The Raiders were already inside. Fight or die. A shotgun boomed, shattering the silence. The front doors burst open, and a group of men stormed in, rugged, armed, and ruthless. Run! Kevin shouted. Sarah bolted toward the back, but one of the Raiders grabbed her by the arm. She screamed. Daniel acted on pure instinct. He swung his pipe, slamming it into the man's skull. The Raider crumpled to the ground, groaning in pain. Kevin and Travis fought off two more, but there were too many. A bald man with a scarred face aimed his pistol at them, grinning. Bad move. Daniel's heart stopped. Then, gunfire. But not from the Raiders. From outside. Bullets ripped through the store windows, shattering glass and sending the Raiders diving for cover. Daniel didn't question it. Go! Kevin grabbed Sarah's hand, and they sprinted toward the back door. Travis hesitated for only a second before following. They burst into the alleyway, breathing heavily. The gunfire continued behind them. But who had shot at the Raiders? Another group? More survivors? No time to find out. Kevin looked at them all. We keep moving. No stopping. No looking back. And for the first time, Travis didn't argue. They disappeared into the dark city, with nowhere left to hide. The city streets were a maze of darkness and death. Broken streetlights flickered, casting eerie glows over the abandoned cars and decaying bodies. Every alley felt like a trap, every shadow a hiding place for something worse than the undead. Daniel, Kevin, Sarah, and Travis ran without stopping, their breath ragged from exhaustion and fear. Behind them, the gunfire had stopped, but that didn't mean they were safe. The Raiders were still out there. And now, they were being hunted. No time to rest. They ducked into an abandoned diner, the once busy restaurant now covered in bloodstains and overturned tables. The windows were shattered, and the air smelled of rot. Kevin peeked outside. No sign of them. But they won't give up easily. Travis leaned against the counter, wiping sweat from his forehead. They had us dead to rights. Someone saved us back there. Daniel exhaled. But who? Sarah sat on an overturned chair, still shaken. Maybe another survivor? Kevin shook his head. Or another group just as dangerous as the Raiders. We can't risk running into them. Daniel looked at Travis. You said the hospital was dangerous, but it's close, right? Travis frowned. Yeah. About 4 blocks south. But it's suicide, too many infected. Sarah's eyes widened. My brother. I have to go there. Daniel felt a pang of sympathy. Then we go. Kevin sighed. We barely made it out of the store alive, and now we're going to walk into a death trap? Sarah looked at him, desperate. If you had family out there, wouldn't you do the same? Kevin hesitated. Then, without another word, he grabbed his crowbar. "Let's move." The streets of death. They slipped back into the streets, keeping low, avoiding the open spaces. Every few steps, a corpse would twitch, a reminder that any of them could spring to life at any moment. Daniel's grip tightened on his pipe. The hospital loomed in the distance, its windows shattered, the entrance covered in bloodstains. Travis let out a low curse. "This is a bad idea." Kevin led the way toward a side alley, hoping to avoid the main road. But as soon as they stepped in, they heard it. A whistle. The sound echoed through the alley, bouncing off the walls like a twisted melody. Daniel's blood ran cold. What the hell was that? Then, footsteps. Shadows moved above them, on the rooftops. Kevin grabbed Daniel's arm. "They found us." Sarah gasped. "The raiders?" Travis nodded grimly. "Yeah. And they're playing with us." A voice called out from the darkness. "You think you can run forever?" Daniel's stomach twisted. They were being stalked. Kevin gritted his teeth. "We have to make a move. Now." Travis pointed to a broken fire escape leading up to an apartment building. "We go up. We'll lose them in the buildings." Sarah hesitated. "What if they follow?" Travis gave a dark smirk. "Then we make them regret it." The rooftop chase. They scrambled up the fire escape, their hearts pounding. Daniel's hands slipped on the rusted metal, but Kevin grabbed him, pulling him up. Below, the raiders entered the alley. One of them, a man with a thick beard and a rifle, grinned. "Climbing won't save you." Then, gunshots. Bullets tore through the metal staircase as Daniel and the others ducked, sprinting across the rooftop. A door leading into the building stood slightly open. Travis kicked it wider. "In here." They rushed inside, just as more bullets whizzed past them. The group ran through the dark, abandoned apartments, hallways filled with overturned furniture, broken TVs, and bloodstains leading into rooms best left unexplored. Daniel could barely breathe. The raiders were close. Then, Sarah tripped over something. A corpse. Its dead eyes shot open. Sarah screamed. No time for mistakes. The zombie lunged, its teeth snapping inches from Sarah's face. Kevin swung his crowbar, crack. The zombie's skull caved in. But the noise had already drawn attention. More moans rose from the rooms ahead. Shadows moved behind the broken doors. Daniel's chest tightened. "We woke them up." Travis growled. "Great. Now we've got two problems." Behind them, the raiders were still coming. Ahead, the undead were waking up. Kevin gritted his teeth. "Then we fight." The first zombie lunged, and Daniel swung his pipe, smashing its skull. Sarah grabbed a knife from a nearby table, stabbing another through the eye. Travis slashed at a third, but the zombie didn't go down, it tackled him to the ground. "Travis!" Daniel shouted. Kevin grabbed a broken chair and slammed it down on the zombie's head, crushing it. Travis gasped, shoving the corpse off him. "Remind me to never fall again." But they didn't have time to celebrate. The raiders were on the other side of the door. The knob turned. Kevin locked eyes with Daniel. "We need to go. Now." They bolted toward the other end of the apartment, bursting through a glass door leading to another rooftop. The hospital was just 1 block away. But the raiders were right behind them. And there was no way to hide. The city stretched out below them, a wasteland of death and destruction. Fires still smoldered in the distance, sending thick plumes of smoke into the night sky. But none of that mattered. What mattered was survival. Daniel, Kevin, Sarah, and Travis sprinted across the rooftop, their footsteps pounding against the concrete. Behind them, the raiders weren't slowing down. A voice rang out in the night, sharp, amused. "You can run, but you can't hide." Daniel's stomach twisted. They were toying with them. Like hunters playing with their prey. The hospital was so close, just 1 block away. but between them and salvation was a deadly drop to the street below. Kevin skidded to a stop at the edge of the building. Damn it. We can't jump that. Travis scanned the area. There's a way down, fire escape on the other side. Daniel nodded. Then move. Now. Gunfire exploded behind them. Bullets tore through the night. Sarah screamed as a bullet grazed her shoulder. Kevin yanked her behind a rooftop vent for cover. You okay? She winced, clutching her arm. Yeah, just keep going. Travis fired a warning shot with the pistol he'd stolen from a dead raider earlier. The sound echoed through the air, but the raiders weren't intimidated. They laughed. Cute. But you're just making this more fun for us. Daniel clenched his jaw. We have to move. Travis led the way, kicking open a rusted door leading inside the building. They rushed down a dark hallway, the air thick with decay. Then, more trouble. Trapped between the dead and the living. As they ran through the apartment's hallways, moans began to rise from the shadows. Sarah sucked in a breath. No, not now. Zombies stumbled out of the rooms, drawn by the gunfire. Their bodies were rotting, twitching, hungry. Kevin raised his crowbar. Keep moving. Don't stop. Daniel swung his pipe, smashing in a walker's skull before it could grab him. Blood splattered across the wall, but there was no time to react. More zombies filled the hallway. And behind them? The raiders were closing in. We're boxed in. Sarah cried. Travis gritted his teeth. Not yet. Through here. He kicked open another door, an old maintenance stairwell leading downward. The group rushed inside just as gunfire ripped through the hallway. The raiders had caught up. The fall. The stairwell was falling apart. The railing shook under their weight as they raced downward. Then, crack. The rusted steps gave way beneath Travis. He let out a yell as he fell through the broken floor. Daniel's eyes widened. Travis. Travis hit the ground below with a sickening thud. He groaned, rolling onto his side, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Sarah gasped. Oh God. Kevin clenched his jaw. We have to keep moving. Daniel hesitated. Travis had been a liar, a thief, but he'd also fought beside them. And now, he was helpless. The raiders were coming. If they left Travis behind, he'd die. The choice. Travis looked up at them, breathing heavily. Go. Daniel shook his head. We're not leaving you. Travis laughed bitterly. That's your mistake. Sarah knelt beside him. We can carry you. Noah's voice was firm. You slow down, you all die. Kevin stared at him, then cursed under his breath. He's right. Daniel clenched his fists. Every instinct told him to save Travis. But then, they heard the raiders' boots above them. Found them. The decision was made for them. Kevin grabbed Daniel's arm. We don't have time. Daniel hated it. But he knew Kevin was right. Travis gave him one last look. See you on the other side. And then, he turned his gun on the stairwell. Boom! The explosion collapsed the entrance, sealing him inside with the raiders. Daniel, Kevin, and Sarah stumbled backward, smoke and dust filling the air. The last thing they heard was gunfire. And then, silence. Travis was gone. The final block. They didn't stop running. They burst through the emergency exit, finally reaching the street. The hospital loomed ahead, broken, blood-stained, but still standing. Sarah's breathing was ragged. We made it. Daniel clenched his fists. At what cost? Kevin wiped sweat from his brow. We don't stop now. We finish this. They sprinted toward the hospital doors. And just as they reached the entrance, something moved inside. A silhouette. Not a zombie. A person. Waiting for them. Daniel's heart pounded. Who was inside? And more importantly, were they friend or foe? The hospital stood before them, towering like a silent graveyard of the past. Bloodstains smeared the shattered glass doors. The wind howled through the broken windows, carrying the distant groans of the undead. But Daniel, Kevin, and Sarah weren't focused on any of that. Their eyes were locked on the silhouette inside. A figure stood just beyond the entrance, hidden in the shadows. Not a zombie. A survivor. Kevin gripped his crowbar, stepping forward cautiously. "Who's there?" The figure raised a gun. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Was this another raider? Then, the person spoke. "Sarah?" Sarah gasped. "James?" Without hesitation, she rushed forward, tears spilling down her face. The figure stepped into the dim light. A young man, bruised and battered, but alive. Sarah collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "I thought you were dead." James held her tightly. "I thought the same about you." Daniel let out a slow breath. They had found him. But they weren't safe yet. Kevin's eyes darted around. "We don't have time for reunions. The raiders could still be after us." James pulled back from Sarah. "Then we need to move. Come inside. Now." A temporary refuge. James led them through the ruined hospital, past abandoned wheelchairs and blood-splattered walls. The place reeked of death, but it was eerily quiet. Daniel looked around warily. "You've been hiding here?" James nodded. "For weeks. I've been moving between floors, avoiding the infected." Kevin frowned. "And the raiders?" James's jaw tightened. "They've come through before. But they don't stay long. Too many zombies." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Then we're safe?" James hesitated. "For now." Daniel didn't like the sound of that. He turned to James. "We need supplies and a way out of the city. Do you know of any?" James sighed. "There's an ambulance in the underground parking garage. If we can get it running, we can escape." Kevin nodded. "Then that's our way out." But James wasn't finished. "There's just one problem," he said grimly. "The garage is overrun. The final battle." They didn't have a choice. Armed with whatever weapons they had, they made their way down into the dark, suffocating garage. The air was damp, thick with the smell of decay. The ambulance sat in the far corner, so close, yet so far. Because between them and escape were dozens of zombies. Daniel's grip tightened on his pipe. This was it. Kevin took a deep breath. "No running. No hiding. We fight." The first zombie turned, snarling, its decayed mouth stretching wide. Then, chaos. Kevin swung his crowbar, cracking a zombie's skull open. Daniel slammed his pipe into another, bone crunching under the impact. Sarah stabbed a walker in the neck, gagging as black blood sprayed everywhere. James fired his gun, the shots echoing in the confined space. A bullet ripped through a zombie's skull, but more kept coming. Daniel's heart pounded. There were too many. And then, a scream. Sarah. A zombie had grabbed her, dragging her toward its rotting teeth. "No!" James fired, but his gun clicked empty. Daniel didn't think. He lunged forward, swinging his pipe with all his strength. The zombie's skull caved in, its body slumping lifelessly to the ground. Sarah gasped, shaking. Thank you." Daniel grabbed her hand, pulling her up. "No time. Move." Kevin reached the ambulance, yanking the door open. "Get in." James slid into the driver's seat, frantically hotwiring the engine. The undead closed in from all sides. "Come on, come on," Kevin shouted. Then, the engine roared to life. James slammed his foot on the gas. The ambulance lurched forward, crashing through the horde. Zombies splattered against the front, bodies flying as they raced toward the exit. The garage doors were still shut. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. We're trapped. James didn't slow down. He rammed the doors at full speed. With a deafening crash, the ambulance burst into the street. They were free. The road ahead. The city blurred behind them as they sped through the ruins. Kevin exhaled, slumping back in relief. We did it. Sarah held James's hand, whispering, I can't believe you're alive. Daniel stared out the window. They had escaped. But the world was still broken. They had survived, for now. James glanced at them. Where to? Daniel met his gaze. Anywhere but here. As the ambulance disappeared into the night, the city behind them burned. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, there was hope. The end.